This is Dave McCain with TRT Genealogy Basics, the second channel from the Right Tree Genealogy. I'm getting ready to present the three-part series from the Right Tree Genealogy Channel into a single video format. This has been shrunk down to include just the three parts of that series related to how to get started into genealogy. Hope this is helpful and enjoy the video. This is Dave McCain with the Right Tree Genealogy, working on the Get Started in Genealogy series, Part 1. My name's David McCain. I'm a family genealogist, been doing this almost 40 years. Now, what do we know? We all start with a blank page. Everybody's genealogy, when you first think that you want to do a family tree or do research on your family, it starts with this blank page here. Okay, everyone does this. Don't be overwhelmed if you're new to this, and those that have been doing this a long time realize sometimes there's still a blank page when we've been working on something for a while. Going to the next thing, here's you or me in this case, my parents, my grandparents on both sides, my great-grandparents on both sides. The fact of the matter is, we all have this same chart. It's the family genealogist, you or me, that's required to do this. It's our to-do. So remember that regardless of who you are, where you are in the world, or anything else, all of us have this same tree, and it continues backwards. Going forward is, what do I know? I suggest you start with yourself and you list the basics. What's your birthday, place of birth, spouse information, those things that you see listed here. And on your parents, if you have information on them, for instance, they're deceased, one or both of them, you want to get that date written down. And you want to also make some listings of your siblings here. Same information if you have siblings or know of siblings. And then each page should have all this information. Be concise. This isn't a story time. This is time to do it in a concise, non-storytelling manner. With that, here's a starter first page example. Okay. You have the date of the record, and this is all fictitious. I just made this up for this example so we could talk here. You're starting this on January 1st, 2022. It's your New Year's resolution. Your name is Joseph George Bailey, father John William Bailey, mother Mary Jane Brown, what day you were born, your spouse's name when you got married, and your children's name. Now, with that said, this is kind of a basic sheet. There's a little more information you can do, but it should be a one page when you're writing this down and getting started. A little further extended information, I have the other information that will be going on that other page. You know, the father's date of birth, where he was born, the day he died. Same thing on the mother and the day she died, and what date they got married. These are all pieces of information you want. And I also want to make a notation here. It's very important. You want to list the children, as I did backing this up. You notice here at the bottom of this page here, well, I have me, my wife's name, and the children's names if this was me or you. You want to do that on each of the parents and each person as you go forward, because you're creating these sheets for your records. So my whole point behind that is you're wanting a one page roughly of getting started. This is you getting started trying to figure out what you know. The key to this whole presentation is, what do you already know? Because it helps the next step that I present in the way I help people do this. Once you get this down on one page, preferably one page as you're doing this, then you're able to do the next thing. So the details that you can have in a concise manner is a good thing. So going back to this, we go to what do I know? Start with what you know. Same phrase, same statement. Continue this for your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, whomever you know. And again, this is how you get started so you know what you know. You want to do this and have each one of those pages so that you know the date that you did them, and is it your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your grandparents. And then you want to do what is called organized, okay? You want to either use this on pre-made forms, log sheets, or you want to make your own. To me, you want to use pre-made ones because you're new to this. If you're new to genealogy,
using these pre-printed forms kind of give you an idea of what you're collecting. Some examples of this, and I went straight to Amazon, and these are prices as of January 2022 when I'm doing this. So I'm looking at one here. You get 7 types of records, and you get 40 sheets total. It says includes 14 5-generation charts, 2-sided family group sheet, and more. And then down here, this is the LDS, or now they're called Family Search or Research Centers. But this is a packet that was available online at the time of this recording that you could possibly get and order in, and it's basically the same type of information. Going forward, I went ahead and pulled out what you see as an example from this same company. It's Easy Genie, and you can't see it very well, but it says, you know, born where, born when, born where, died when, died where, those things, and you're the ancestor of. So for instance, you put yourself in this block right here, and your parents, grandparents, etc. back. You can say who did this sheet and the date you did this sheet, and these are again records as you step forward. And another example is the family group sheet. That data that you recorded on the original sheets that you wrote down, you can now transfer it into here: child's name, birth date, location, marriage date, and all that stuff. Those things that I wrote down and had you write down on the beginning sheets are in this example family group sheet from Easy Genie. That's an example of that. Now you want to transfer them to these log sheets that you can put in a binder or in some folders that you can keep track of, because this is going to get bigger as you go. This is your written or hand documentation that you're working on. You know, you go forward and you do digitize these as you step forward, but right now this is where you record the documents, information that you've done in your what do I knows. Okay, this video was fairly short, and here's the next step of this. You know, when you get started, start with what you know, make a sheet for each person. And again, it's concise. This is not storytelling time. You may write a book, you may write stories, short stories, things that you want to post out to family. That's fine if you want to blog or you want to do something like that. But this is really collecting the data and what you know. And then once you write it down, you know, you want to transfer this into forms that have the data collected. You've got your notes. Now you've got it in a concise format, and those are usable and findable for the future. Now that we've got that done, you know what you know, you have to, and it's organized. It's the next step. The key to all this is genealogy is really what you want to know. You determine what you want to know, how you want to know it. So the second part is going to kind of give you questions to ask and what the next step is now that you've written down what you know. So I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you continue to watch this series. Doing part 2 of the Getting Started in Genealogy series. This one will cover some of the aspects of what we gained from the first part and go into some next steps that you need to do. This document right here was one available to me back in the 80s and the 90s, and what I filled out forms of, and I just thought I'd show an image of that for people to see. Back in the 90s and 2000s, I got documents from other people, and here's good examples of what I was referencing. Here's a family group sheet. It was filled out by another researcher and sent to me. I actually helped assist in this document. My name's listed here. He sent me several pages. This happens to be the page associated with what I helped him with, which was Jane McCain. He did not have her surname. And this is MC McCracken or Mordecai McCracken that married their daughters, and so we worked together. But this is a list of people that helped provide information to this gentleman in his research, and he listed their names of who provided that information. And then here's another example that I got a copy of on July 13th, 2000 from the LDS, or Family Search as it's known today. And I'm going to go ahead and a little more detail on this one over here. I blew it up for us to look at. Just because you start a record does not mean you stop right there and you never look at it again. This is an example of a record that was started in 1939 and continued up to 1961. Records can be dynamic and fluid that you're creating. Don't just assume it's done, you put it away, it's filed, never to look at again. You may be pulling it out for years, decades even. And so then that leads to, what do I want to know? That's a blank page. What you want to know as a researcher is different than the next person. So with that said, what do I or you want to know? You take what you learned from part one of your own analysis of writing down what you know personally, and then what you want to know, and it helps you get together what your goals are of your research. And that's what's important of this part two. This is the beginning of the real work. As a genealogist, it's not instant. You can't just do a website and say, my name is this, here's your family. You may find one, but you still got to document what those are. I mean, this takes work. The first step, and I want to make this very clear, I'm going to put myself down in a small corner here again. First thing in this next step is to define what you as the researcher's end goals are for your research. This is subject to change and most likely will over time, but that's okay. You need to start somewhere, and when you need to start somewhere, you get it down on paper and then you go from there. And some questions you need to ask yourself: do I want to trace my surnames back to the beginning of time? I mean, there are some researchers that every surname, once they get a surname to a point to where surnames no longer exist in that country that they're from, that family line's from, then they go to the next one and they try to solve down through each one of them to get them to where they end, and then they say, I've done what I can do. Some people just say, where did they live? I know where I'm at today. Where did we live in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s? And then some people have just straight out mysteries in the family. Why did my grandpa change his name? I mean, for instance, my grandfather was born Alan Thurman, long spelling. He changed his name to John Allen Thurman, short name. Why did he do that? So that was a family question I had. So that's something you might find out that you're looking for here. Or do I want to know why my family came to this town or city? Now with those, it goes to the next piece of this. Most of these previous questions listed still need the following, no matter what the question is. Make a list of who knows your family, who could possibly know your ancestors. That will help you determine more specific information as you step forward. Then you need to know, what questions should I ask family members or friends to get to my end questions I'm trying to find out about. When I exhaust who list, where can I get additional answers? Let's just pick on the very first one. Make a list of who is living that can tell me about my ancestors. If at all possible, you want the oldest generation that you can find here. Oldest generation. Be ready to change your list, because you go to your grandma and your grandma says, well, I don't know this, but old John knows everything. And old John happens to be a family friend that she knows that's a few years older than her, that knew the family better than she did. She was the younger of the children type of thing. But you don't assume the answers you get are all correct. You just take those and put them in for the bigger picture, to fill in for your bigger puzzle that you have for your end goals. Looking at some of those questions, some of those questions you ask, they need to be open-ended in cases, or not very hard questions for that person that you're talking to, the friend or the family member. And I've got a couple examples of some questions here. I know my dad's name is John Henry Bailey, but I don't know where he came from or his birthday or anything about him. Do you happen to know? So you're asking somebody, and it usually, especially the older generation, it's important to them, someone actually asks them things. So you'll be surprised what you'll learn when you do that interview question. Or mom doesn't know her grandma Gertrude's family name. Do you happen to know it? So that's why that question could come about. And that person could help you there. And then you could have this open-ended question like, I've heard that we're Scottish or we're Irish or something like that, But I was also told that you know a lot of stuff. Anything you can help me with would be helpful. And when you ask that, or kind of open-ended statement like that, that person might start, well, yeah, I've got some things about that I can tell you. Or you need to ask it back in a little more details with them. But at least you're opening the story for the person to start thinking. And it could take a few visits to a person before they actually remember these things. Don't just jump in, I got to know this, which is something I did sometimes in my youth. Asking the questions, or putting together the questions, is the next step there. And always remember your end goals, okay? What are you trying to gain from this conversation that benefits your research in the family line, or whatever your research topic is for the genealogy? Then the next thing I get asked about a lot is, well, I don't have anybody, or my list is exhausted. What do I do? Well, that's where you take the information you have of what you know and start looking into local courthouses, cemeteries where you know where your parents were buried or grandparents or somebody associated with the family. You can start looking into the historical societies in a town, in a county, in a townland, those type of things. They have records that you don't realize they have, and you go there. And then I want to point out another biggie here, and that is one I've said several times in videos. FamilySearch.org, it's free, okay? Start there. When you can't make your trips, you can get in there, and it's free to search in there and find records and pull down records. So use them to the fullest. And now this is kind of like a bonus document I put up here. This is an actual form I created. This is from me. My parents were having their 50th anniversary in May of 1997. This is a family gathering. I'm taking an opportunity at a family gathering to the guests. Now, I want to state this. Some of the guests were receptive. Some of the guests were not so receptive. Some of them just kind of looked at me and said, I'm just not doing it. And that's fine. I took advantage of an opportunity to use a family gathering and to find out things that, even though I've been researching, this is May 1997, and I'd already been researching about 14 years. There was still information I did not have from some of the cousins and some of the other family members that showed up. So to me, this is an opportunity. They were there. Ask them now that they're together. This person did not fill out the details of the form, and they really didn't want to get any more. I mean, the spouse already attached them to them, but they didn't give me any additional information about where their parents were from. However, at least I got a birth date out of this. I got the person's full name. I got a location where they were born. Those are all beneficial things. I just wanted to show you this is a piece that I got even years after I got started. You still can get one of these basic forms together and present it at a family gathering. So for conclusions, take what you know, get your end research goals together. Yes, they could change over time, but you got to start somewhere, and that will keep you focused on what you're learning at this point. When you redefine what your focus is or what you're wanting to do, that's fine. You still have those records. They're going to help you in your research. Keep it organized because you're going to gather a lot of stuff. You'll want to digitize your records and put all those documents that you either got copies of or handed down to you in a safe place, and have the other ones digitized. You want to have a couple copies of each of these documents so they can be passed forward. And then the last thing on this part of this is, get your tree online. There's Ancestry.com, there's MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, FamilySearch.org, etc. It's not my statement to you of what to use. It's what you want to use. That's the end of part 2, doing part 3 of the Getting Started in Genealogy series. What do I believe? You came into this with part 1 is what do I know? Part 2 is what do I want to know? Now what? That's where we are on this. After completing some interviews and record searches, we need to decide what to believe. Not every story we hear or family fact is fact. Some are literally lore of the family, and others are real and can be documented. Next is, this is what you got to do as a researcher. You go to find primary sources, and primary sources, original documents, original statements. For instance, you'll see an order book, and it's an order book entry. It is a secondary source. You want original documents, so original wills, primary sources, first person information. If you look back on one of the records I showed before, this is a page from part 2 of the video. Well, this person told me their birth date and where they were born. That's first person information, okay? And they listed who their mother and their father were. Now that we've seen that, always want to verify your source and family connections before adding them. So you have records that someone told you, you interviewed them, and they said, well, our family lived in Bracken County, Kentucky. They got married there, I believe, and then they ended up here where we're at now. You want to always verify a source. If this, for instance, is your aunt that heard the story from their dad. That's second person story. It's being relayed by the child of the person, so it's relatively believable, and they should know if their parents are telling the story, this is what dad said type of thing. You log that. Well, if you can go look for census records and those type things, you're helping verify a source information that you have. You know, you don't say it's not valid, and you don't say it's invalid. You want to use it as a piece of the puzzle to disprove or prove. If you can prove what you see in that posting with other documents, then that's great that you found that. It's a post without a source, but it doesn't mean it's not valid. Without sources or supporting documents, it is only a working hypothesis. I've worked a long time on my genealogy, and one thing I want to point out here is there's still some working hypotheses after almost 40 years of research. Sometimes you have to, and there's other people that present that you look at negative confirmation. If you can prove a family lineage, and actually this document is going to kind of come with that as well, if you can show a lineage, you think it's one thing, but you're finding documentation that says the other, then it's still evidence for you to use in your records to put someone down. Here's a real research example. Back in 1998, and I'll actually specify it here, it's blocked up here in the corner. I posted this post, this is from me, April 14th, 1998, and it says at 8 a.m. So this is a Roots Web message that I posted back at that time. I was posting on message boards. Now, what I want to state here is caution, you know, just because it makes sense or it's easy doesn't make it correct. I stated at that time, and we'll just go ahead and go to the next one, and it is believed that he, meaning James McCain, is the grandson of Samuel McCain. It makes sense. Samuel McCain married Nancy Heverin, and they got married in 1818. And it makes sense that they have a child named Nancy because his wife's name is Nancy. However, this is not correct information. When you're pulling together records, you want to continue looking. Just because you have this is something to write down. You know, you can write down that this James McCain was born in this date, which has been validated. He married Mary Ellen Sanks, which has been validated. She's the daughter of John V. Sanks and Mary Ellen Tennis, which has been validated. So this information right here, all the way to this point, has been validated. It doesn't invalidate the rest of the information just because something else may be incorrect. It does say believed. And at that time, I didn't have documents to disprove that that was the case. So you need to continue to look for records. And read this phrase. As can be seen on these two records, Samuel and Nancy Heverin had a daughter named Margaret, not Nancy. There are additional records including marriage and censuses that support Margaret versus Nancy. So this is a family Bible record, and I received a copy of the family Bible from an individual, and this is what it says here. But down in this corner it says Margaret Ann McCain was born July the 26th, 1819. So in this birth section of it, it says when Samuel was born, when Nancy was born, his wife, and when their first child born was Margaret, and this is when she was born. Over here is a family group sheet from LDS, Latter-day Saints, or Family Search as it's called today. This is a group sheet started in 1939 by the record I see on it itself. Family members, a person that was doing research at the time, again, they have Margaret in this archived record of family group sheet from basically a few generations back to what our research is. What I want to say there is when you first start with an information, the first information was this was what was believed, and it made sense because of the names and everything, and it was easy. But you got to keep researching to give yourself a better answer. Try to be careful what you add to your tree, because other people may take that as the valid sourcing and go forward with it. The more records you have, then the better you can look at your family tree and say, you know, this is what it really is. Find primary sources. Look for, original first-person records, as I pointed out before. Original records to validate information you've gotten from interviews or from other people, or even those unsourced records. Always verify a source and family connection before adding them. And then I also want to make a note that is not always discussed. Never assume an unsourced record is valid or invalid. Okay, just consider it a piece of the puzzle to prove or disprove. You now want to go after those records.
Thank you for watching this video series in this format. If you enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing to this channel right here and post a comment in this video so that I know if this is the kind of format you're interested in for this channel. Let's continue learning together.